Good morning, story time. How are you doing today? Hi, Birdie Blue. Madeline. I will remember that. At least for today, I will remember that. You'll have to remind me again tomorrow, if you're here tomorrow. But today I will call you Madeline. I'm doing alright. I'm glad to be here in this moment right now with all of you. How do you find all that food? Well, you look in the dumpster. That's how. That's exactly how. So, this is morning prayers. So we can start today with a little vocal warm-up. And then we'll shift into repeating some very old words. And we'll tell some old stories. And I really enjoy spending my mornings like this with you all. And I hope you enjoy it too. I'm glad you liked the video with my mother. It was quite a treat to visit with her yesterday. And I'm glad I was able to share a tiny fraction of that interaction with you. Thanks for the lollipops, my college girl. Good morning, Jennifer. Thanks for the roses, Nat. So, how shall we begin? Let's begin with a deep breath in, right? Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. And exhale with a low, even tone. Now we'll do that again, but a little bit higher, and hopefully a little bit clearer. This exercise is to maintain awareness and establish awareness with the vocal tract so that we can sound the way we want to sound, so that I can sound the way I want to sound. I don't know about you. I focus on it a lot, maybe too much. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the ice cream, Nat. I do appreciate it. Alright, so we're going to inhale and exhale with a tone similar to your speaking voice, whatever that might be, and try to keep it as pure and constant and sustained as you can. So, Mycology Girl, I don't know how many of my lives you've been to. There's a fairly standard arc of numbers. Usually in the first 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, my viewership will peak these days around 200. This time last year, it was peaking around 2,000 before going down. So, playing the TikTok game has gotten significantly harder over the last year as more people have found audiences and the algorithm has changed and the competition has gotten fiercer. And I haven't really known what to do with that. Like, what do you do when your live analytics are 10 times worse than they were a year ago? Do you still keep working, even though the return is so much worse? I do continue to work. I do continue to do... Oh gosh, what did I do? Oh no. Because I know there are people here that I am genuinely connecting with, and that feels important, even if the numbers are poor, even if I can't exactly make a living doing this. I still do it. It still feels worth my emotional energy, because saying these prayers is sustaining. Which is to say, Bushman, that TikTok follows trends. TikTok follows attention in the individual moment. Frenetic attention. I do still have goats, Sarah. I should make some goat videos. I will. So, today we're going to say some old words, like we do every day, because it's valuable. Thanks, Yackers. I'm glad you like them. I'm trying different things, right? Experimenting with different kinds of content, different messages, different stories. See what resonates with people. Sometimes I feel a bit lost. Not sure exactly what to make for you all, but I'm glad you liked those things. I enjoyed making them. Thank you for the mustache, Dr. Punk. Shema Yisrael Asher Eloheinu Yahweh Echad. ואהבת את ענת אלוהיך ובכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך וחיה כי יחיו אלוהיך אל הארץ אשר נשבע לאבותיך לאברהם ליצחק וליעקב לתת לך ערים גדולות וטובות אשר לא בנית ובתים מלאים כל טובה אשר מילאת ואורות הצווים אשר לא עשת קרבים וזיתים אשר לא נתת והלכת ושבעת הישמר לך פן תשכח את יהוה אשר הוציאך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. Yes, this is my grandfather's talis, talit, singular, plural. Clearly I don't have enough control over various dialects of Hebrew to know how to pronounce it properly, but here we are, wearing it. There's a certain amount of irony or questioning in wearing a garment like this, but I do wear it every day. It feels important. Jolie, how is your housing search going? Are you finding... Talis is singular. It's Yiddish versus Hebrew. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I think I knew that, but I didn't know it confidently enough to assert. Thank you, Marie. I appreciate hearing that. Tali tot is plural. Yes. Yeah. That makes sense. That is how that language works. Anyway, my grandfather wore this. I wear it now. There's some strange gender things associated with that, but it's okay. We don't need to go in with them. You found a place. I have no idea where Logan Square is, but I was in Chicago in February, visiting my sister-in-law. She's an actress there. Good morning, Kate. I'm glad you enjoyed that video. A lot of people have been saying that, and it's nice to hear. You're in Chicago too. It's a very pretty city. I wasn't there for long. I was only there for a couple of days. But it's a nice place. Good morning. Good morning. So, we're going to continue reading from this book, Stories of Ancient Canaan. We finished the Baal cycle, for those of you who were here when I was reading that last week. And now, instead, we are with the story of Aqhat. Aqhat is a human hero, right? So while the Baal cycle was a story about the death and resurrection of gods and the dramas of those particular godly families, this story is a story about how gods and humans interact. And they interact rather antagonistically. So where we were at, right, the first act tells us about Aqhat's origins, right? Danel was very pious. His father, Danel, was very pious and praised El for a heroic son. And El says, fine, you can have a heroic son. Sounds good. Have a feast. It'll be great. And then the heroic son is born, and he grows up, and he's very handsome and very valiant, and he has a very nice bow. Arrows. It's a metaphor for virility. Did you know? And Anat sees him, and she thinks he's very sexy, and she says, give me your bow. And he's like, nah. And she's like, I'll give you eternal life, because, that's what she does. She resurrects people. She's a god of death and rebirth. And he's like, nah, I'm going to die like everybody else, right? My head is going to be wrapped in plaster, just like everybody else. And Anat is furious at this, right? Because she wants to have his favor. And when he denies her, she kills him. She makes an alliance with Yaptan, the vulture god, and she kills him. And we can read what that is like. The final phrases of Tablet 2 go like this. She took Yaptan, the lady's man. She put him in her pouch like a vulture, in her bag like a bird. When Aqhat sat down to eat, the son of Danel, to his meal, the vulture swooped over him. A flock of birds soared above. Among the vultures swooped Anat. She set him over Aqhat. She struck him twice on the skull, 3 times, over the ear. Made his blood run like a slaughterer, run to his knees like a butcher. His breath left him like a wind, his spirit like a breeze, like smoke from his nostrils. And she wept. So, now we will continue with Tablet 3. What happens after the death of Aqhat? Into the water he fell. The bow was broken. I killed him only for his bow. I killed him for his arrows. I did not let him live, but his bow has not become mine. And because of his death, the first fruits of summer have withered, the ear in its husk. So again, we have this linkage between the death of a king and the infertility of the landscape. And Anat has regret for killing this handsome man. Then Danel, the healer's man, the hero, the man of the god of Harnam, got up and sat at the entrance of the gate, next to the granary on the threshing floor. He judged the cases of the windows, presided over orphans' hearings. Pagat raised her eyes and looked on the threshing floor. The greenery had dried. It drooped. It had withered. Over her father's house vultures were swooping. A flock of birds soared above. Pagat wept in her heart. She cried inwardly. She tore the clothes of Danel, the healer's man, the garments of the hero, the man of the god of Harnam. Then Danel, the healer's man, cursed the clouds in the still heat, the rain of the clouds which falls in summer, the dew which drops on the grapes. For 7 years let Baal fail. For 8, rider on the clouds, no dew, no showers, no surging of the 2 seas, no benefit of Baal's voice. For the clothes of Danel, the healer's man, have been torn, the garments of the heroes, the man of the god of Harnam. Right, so everybody enters into a stage of mourning. The land is no longer fertile. For 7 years, that magical number. Listen, Pagat. You get up early to draw the water. You brush the dew from the barley. You know the course of the stars. Saddle an ass, harness a donkey, attach my silver reins, my golden bridle. Pagat obeyed. She who got up early to draw water, she who brushed the dew from the barley, who knew the course of the stars, in tears she saddled an ass. In tears she harnessed a donkey. In tears she lifted her father. She put him on the ass's back, on the splendid back of the donkey. Danel made a tour of inspection of his fields. He saw the stalk in the fields. He saw the stalk in the plots. He embraced the stalk and kissed it. If only the stalk could grow in the fields, the stalk grow in the plots of the plant. The hand of Aqhat the hero would harvest you, place you in the granary. He made a tour of inspection of his plots. He saw an ear growing in the plots, an ear growing in the scorched fields. He embraced the ear and kissed it. If only the ear could grow. In plots the ear could grow. In the scorched fields the plant, the hand of Aquat the hero would harvest you, placed you in the granary. These words had just come from his mouth, this speech from his lips. When she raised her eyes and looked, 2 lads were coming. He was struck twice on the skull, 3 times over the ear. Tears poured, like quarter shekels. We have news for you, Danelle. She made his breath leave him like wind, his spirits like a breeze, like smoke from his nostrils. They arrived, they raised their voices and shouted, Listen, Danelle, the healer's man, Aquat the hero is dead. The Virgin Anat made his breath leave him like wind, his spirit like a breeze. His feet shook, his face broke out in a sweat, his back was as though shattered, his joints trembled, his vertebrae weakened. And this is how Danelle learns of the death of his son. So it goes. These are not easy stories, right? They're stories about grief, about death, and how we handle them. I need water. Good morning, Meg. I'm glad you're back, Madeline, if you're still back. Maybe you've gone. Come in.
Can I rise my bread in here because this is the warmest place?
Oh my god. Sure.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye. Are you cooking dinner tonight?
I am.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Kimmy. How are you? What kind of bread? Probably some sort of sourdough. Bread. Yes. My housemaid is making me bread. And she's rising it in my room because I keep my room warm because I'm very cold. I'm a cold human. Meg, I've been going live. Excuse me. I've been going live basically daily. But you can see there's not that many people here right now. My standing in the algorithm has dropped. And yet I am still here. You're surviving. Something tricky happening. Something hard. I mean, I guess we're all surviving. Life is hard. Hi, Katie. Gosh, I haven't seen you in a few weeks. How are you? How's your kids? You're on summer vacation now, huh? So, we can continue on today. I'm glad you like these lives. I enjoy them too. I mean, I wouldn't do them if I didn't enjoy them. Primarily, I do this ritual for myself, and I'm glad that you like to join along. Sick this week with a stomach bug. Not summer vacation for another few weeks. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Stomach bugs suck. You have a great day too, Kimmy. I'm doing pretty well today. Yeah, I'm better than I was a few months ago. That job that I had really had me down, and I'm very grateful to be done with it. Work started 2 hours ago and you're doing your makeup now. Are you in an office? Can you do your makeup in an office, or do you work from home, Kate? You like when I read. Well, that is reassuring to hear. Because generally the feedback that I get, like numerically, the feedback that I get is like when I start reading, everyone leaves the room, right? Or like 4/5 of my audience leaves. And like that is true, but like what kind of audience are they? Who is listening? Who is leaving? So I really do appreciate the feedback that you like hearing those stories. You work from home. If I remember correctly, you're a therapist? You're a counselor of some sort? Is that true? Yeah, that makes sense. You can do your makeup in between sessions or some sort, if I'm remembering right, but maybe I'm not. Here I am, Jen. I've been posting. You can go see. I've posted like, I don't know, 7 or 8 new videos in the last couple of weeks. So, we are going to say Arati now. And the word Arati means flame in Sanskrit. There's our little flame. Okay, I was just completely confusing you with someone else. I really apologize, Kate. uh, it's hard to keep track of all of the bits of facts, bits of life history that people tell me. Because, it's a funny kind of connection, right? Like, I know who you are, right? Like, I see you almost every day. But the network of personal facts in my mind is more limited than I would like it to be. You're a software developer. You code. Code all day from home. Do you have roommates? Do you have a partner that you live with? It can be tough to work from home if you don't have anyone else to keep you company. I'm glad you're here, Jen. Just your cat. Sometimes I fantasize about just living with a cat, right? Like, I live with so many people, constantly rotating cast of characters, right? And so I have this, internal assumption, right? Like, I joined community. I looked for community because I really didn't like living alone. But now that I've been living this way for a decade, sometimes I fantasize of just being responsible for my own business and only seeing people when I explicitly ask to see them. Sometimes it's nice to have a friend come into my room and, here, rise my bread. I'm going to make you bread tonight. Like, there's something very comforting about that. And yet sometimes I wish I did not have to give her my attention. So, comes and goes. Your kids are watching with you. Hi, Ella. Hi, Evelyn. I like your mom a lot. You're living alone this year with a cat, but your boyfriend is not far away. Has he lived in Chicago for a while? Do I still do breakfast on here? Yes, I do. I will have breakfast shortly. Just as soon as we finish the ritual. But y'all are talkative all of a sudden, and I like chatting with you. Is today the Pentecost? What is that? 5 weeks since Easter? Something like that? He's been in Chicago for a couple years. Well, that's nice. That gives a social network that you can connect with pretty immediately. I know you've been back and forth to Chicago for your whole life, so it's not like you don't know people there. But it was Shavuot yesterday, right? All of those Christian and Jewish holidays, they line up. Because they're the same religion. No, they're not the same religion. They're evolutionarily connected. We're gonna be eating rice today, rice and seaweed. I drink coffee sometimes. This says for coffee on it. That was when it had milk in it, and someone was saving it for coffee. Right now it just has water. Good morning from Minnesota. So what is the significance of the Pentecost? I don't actually know much about what that means. I know five something. Yes, I'm Jewish. Sort of. No, I'm definitely Jewish. There are some Jews in the world who would say that I'm not. But I am. My mother certainly is, and my grandmother, and my grandfather, and my father. So it goes. So, RT, right? RT is not a Jewish prayer. RT is a quote from the Bhagavad Gita, right? Most of this is from the Bhagavad Gita, which was written about 2,000 years ago. But it was modified, this particular version that I say, was modified by a man whose title was Shivananda, Guru Shivananda. And he modified it for an American audience, right? So there's some Western gods in there, Western gurus. After the resurrection, the apostles prayed for 9 days to receive the Holy Spirit. Right, but it's been significantly more than 9 days since the resurrection. That was Easter. That was a month ago, right? And tongues of fire descended from the Holy Spirit on them. On the Pentecost? 9 days after Easter? There's too many Christian calendars. The Ascension. Wasn't the Ascension 3 days after the resurrection? I don't know. I should just let you tell me. You tell me what the holiday's about. I don't have to question you about it. So we're going to say arati. The word arati means flame in Sanskrit, or light. The words are from the Bhagavad Gita. They've been modified for an English-speaking audience to have some Abrahamic gurus in there too. Because, that's important. It's a pluralistic prayer. Prayer that contains the names of many gods. And in so repeating their names, we can remind ourselves that all of those different names and stories are connected at the root. That's why I say the prayer anyway. Good morning, Courtney. Jaya Jayarati Vina Vinayaka Vina Vinayaka Shri Ganesha Jaya Jayarati Subramanya Subramanya Kartikeya Jaya Jayarati Venugopala Venugopala Venuola Papa Vidura Navanita Chora Jaya Jayarati Venkanta Ramana Venkanta Ramana Sankata Harana Sita Rama Radhe Shama Jaya Jayarati Gauri Manohara Gauri Manohara Bhavani Sankara Samba Sadashiva Uma Maheshwara Jaya Jayarati Raja Rajeshwari Raja Rajeshwari Tripura Sindari Mahalakshmi Mahasaraswati Mahakali Mahashakti Jaya Jayarati Anjaneya Anjaneya Hanumanta Jaya Jayarati Dattatreya Dattatreya Trimutri Avatara Jaya Jayarati Adityaya Adityaya Bhaskaraya Jaya Jayarati Sanischaraya Sanischaraya Bhaskaraya Jaya Jayarati Sankaracharya Sankaracharya Advaita Gurave Jaya Jayarati Sadgurunata Sadgurunata Shivananda Jaya Jayarati Vishnu Devananda Vishnu Devananda Vishnu Devananda Jaya Jayarati Agastya Munaye Agastya Munaye Shirama Priyaye Jaya Jayarati Ayapa Samine Ayapa Samine Dharma Shastave Jaya Jayarati Jesus Gurave Moses Gurave Buddha Gurave Jaya Jayarati Muhammad Gurave Guru Nanak Gurave Samastya Gurubho Namaha Jaya Jayarati Venugopala Natatra Suyobati Natandrakaratam Lema Vidyobati Kutoyamagni Twameva Bantamanbanti Sarvam Tasya Basya Samidam Vivanti Om Gange Kayamune Kaiva Govari Saraswati Narmade Siddhikaveri Hiyaha Namastitam Namo Namaha Twameva Mata Chapita Twameva Twameva Bandusha Saka Twameva Twameva Vidya Javinam Twameva Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Kayena Vacha Manasendriyarva Budyat Madhava Prakrite Sabhavat Karomi Adyad Mangalam Parasmahe Narayanaiti Sarmar Parami Sarvadharmam Pravichaya Mamikam Saranam Vrija Amsva Sarvapapayo Mokshayami Masucha. Whatever actions I perform with my body, speech, mind, senses, intellect, or my emotions, all these I dedicate to you.
Hello.
Hi.
That was good timing.
It was very good timing. Courtney likes it when you join.
That's cute.
And Grumpy Bubba wonders what's happening. I say prayers every morning. This prayer is called Arati. It's from the Bhagavad Gita. It's a dedication prayer. Dedicate efforts to all those worth dedication to. Now, that sounds judgmental. I don't know. Dedicate to everybody.
Yeah. The translation in this book says that you dedicate them to the Supreme Lord.
That's true, but I'm really not into the Supreme Lord. I'm just not.
Yeah.
Right?
So let's dedicate them to each other instead.
Yeah. Well, because, like, the idea of the Supreme Lord comes from this stuff, right? Like, the God King on high on his holy mountain with his palace, and I'm just over it. Like, I don't, I don't need that. I don't want to imagine God as, like, the king of everything, nor do I want to dedicate myself to some political entity. Or, like, I don't, like, it's not a useful metaphor for me, but I'll dedicate it to all of you, because y'all are great, and you sustain me. It's a nice prayer, isn't it, Julie? Julie hangs out enough to memorize it, too. That's great. Should we say Kaddish?
Sure.
Okay. So, Kaddish is a prayer of mourning. It's also our name, somehow. How'd that happen? I don't know. Kaddish is an extra D. Our name is just one D. So it's different.
Obviously related. Obviously the same root.
So we can say this prayer to remind ourselves what we have lost and let go. Maybe let ourselves let go of things that we're holding on to that we shouldn't be. And it goes like this. Yid Gadal Vid Kadash Shemei Rabbah B'yama Divrach Yote V'yam Lich Malchute B'chayachon Uvyamechon Uvchaye Dekol Beit Yisrael Bagala Uvizman Kariv V'yimru Amen. Yehe Shemei Rabbah Meva'arach Li'olam Almei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitba'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yithaleh V'yithaval Shemei Dekudesha Barichu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Diamiran B'yama V'imru Amen. Yehe Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'yachol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Ose Shalom B'imramav Huya Ase Shalom Aleinu V'yachol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Ose Shalom B'imramav Huya Ase Shalom Aleinu V'yachol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Thanks, everyone. That was nice. I was gonna eat some rice. I can do that offline, or I can do it here.
No, you should do it here.
Do it here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a couple things to go.
A couple of things. Could you get me some rice?
Yeah.
Yes, my partner is Jewish. I took her last name. My last name was not actually
Honestly, better for you than
Kaddish,
for me.
Kaddish. But when I transitioned, I took her name, because why not? Good morning, baby love. How are you? When you work with the religion and in the community for 9 years, you actually learn a lot, I'm sure. What community are you referring to? Develop? Oh, wow.
That's what you asked for.
That is what I asked for. Could I have a seaweed?
Yeah, that was what I was getting.
It's your birthday today. Happy birthday, baby love.
See you later.
Bye. I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing much better than I was in the past. Good morning. Good morning. Happy birthday. Are you doing anything special today? All right. I'm going to do something silly and foolish, but I think you're going to like it. It goes like this. This is your birthday song. It isn't very long. And how old is your daughter currently? She's 4? Am I remembering that correctly? She's 3. There are a number of birthday songs that I've learned from various places. That one is my favorite. Woo. There's another one. What? 3 trombones and a drum and a flute. And Baby Love has a birthday in her birthday suit. Egg, 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 and we're all so glad that she has a birthday and we celebrate that. Egg, egg. That one's a little silly. It's a nice way to spend a birthday. You're working on a puzzle right now. What kind of puzzle? Like a jigsaw puzzle? Or some kind of programming algorithmic code puzzle? You work for rabbis' wives and their families. And learned a lot about kosher rules. What did you do for the wives of these rabbis? Kashrut is wild. Like, it's really crazy. Like, I don't really understand it. Like, I mean, it's like this elaborate us-them distinction, right? Like, it creates cultural isolation and therefore cultural identity formation. Yeah. Like, it's all about defining, like, what we do. Because food is so critical. Food culture is so critical. So if you can share food with people, then you can become part of their community. If you can't share food with them, then you can't, really. Like, it's a very strong boundary. And, like, I guess I often think about it, like, given the way that I live, and the context in which I live, like, we don't have, like, you know, religious dogma about the way that we eat, but we also have extremely strong kosher laws, in that all our meat comes from the land, right? Like, we dumpster dive, like, we have extremely strong food values that bind the culture here together, and they're, you know, they're not written down in the Talmud or whatever, but they're strong. Sometimes too strong. Right? Like, sometimes I worry that they alienate people who visit us because they don't understand why we eat so much lard. You clean houses and cook for parties. And you do work on Shabbos. And they feed you. I mean, that's basically how I understand most Jewish law, is that it exists to define cultural boundaries. In some cases, quite literally. Like, of course, I don't know the name of it because it's outside of my vocabulary. But the practice of setting a line around a community, right? Like, oh, my cat wants to come in. Oh, she'll figure it out. Right, like tying a wire along all the telephone poles so that you can carry things on Shabbat, right? Like, literally just like drawing a big circle around your community. This is inside and this is outside. Right, like harkening back to the days of walled cities, when Jerusalem had big stone walls and you could do things inside the city boundaries that you couldn't do outside. Passover is intense. It's my favorite holiday. I like Passover a lot. Yes. I mean, it's You get to, like, hang out on the floor and eat good food all day long. The last few seders that I've run, we read from this book because I'm a caricature of myself. You figured it out, Kat. Glad you made it. It is a silly story. I've heard an interesting theory about that story, like a mimetic history sort of thing, that the story in Genesis about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right, like that patriarchy, and the Exodus story were at one point separate cultural origin stories, one of Israel and one of Judah, and that specifically the Exodus story was the story of the sea peoples, the Philistines, right? The story of crossing over the sea to escape geopolitical turmoil, right? Because right prior to the establishment of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, right, was the Bronze Age collapse, when the sea peoples came out of the Western Mediterranean and caused all sorts of political upheavals. And that it was only later, like several hundred years later, that the compilers, the canonizers of the Torah, looked at the Exodus story and they looked at the Abraham stories and were like, you know what, we can just like fit these together as a single timeline, but that they actually have different cultural origins and lineages, and I don't know. I like thinking about stories mimetically like that. Right, so reading this stuff, like, oh, that's the older version, and you can see how the story changes with time. Like, there's that scene in Exodus, very famous image. Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's always been the way that it is, right? Like, that the history repeats itself. People lay claim to a land, and they're outside it, and they go and they conquer it. Like, it's really not all that different from Ashkenazi Zionists doing the same thing 3,000 years later. Or Jews from the Babylonian exile coming back and reconquering the region under the auspices of the Persian Empire. Like, there's this bit from the book of Ezra, where all the Babylonian Jews return, and they encounter these other Jews, and the Jews say, like, oh yeah, the Assyrians dropped us here, we were refugees too, we've been living here for 2 or 3 generations, we've adopted your practices, like, we worship Yahweh, he's really great, let's build a temple together. And Ezra's like, no, you're not me, you're not my people, you're some foreigners, and they forcibly remove them from Jerusalem. Like, it's the same story over and over and over again. Yeah, you should read the book of Ezra. Like, not that you should. The book of Ezra is the most, like, patently, you've never heard of Jews fighting Jews in a war sense, but you have. Have I not read you this quote? Okay, I have this quote here, because this quote frightened me. Let me find it. Yeah, here we are. So, in the Exodus story, right, they go out from Egypt, and there's, they have a party at the base of Mount Sinai, and Moses is like, I'm going to go up and talk to God. And they're like, okay, cool, sounds good. We also want to talk to God. So they make a golden calf, and and the golden calf, that's literally just a knot, right? Like, we read this thing about how a knot was a calf, and Baal fucks her and gives rise to the Lord, right? Like, that was the indigenous religious understanding of the time. And Moses comes down, and he says, you're doing this terrible thing, right? You've heard this story of the golden calf before. But the direct quote is rather chilling. Moses stood up in the gate of the camp and said, whoever is for the Lord, come here. And all the Levites rallied to him. And he said to them, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, each of you put sword on thigh, go back and forth from gate to gate throughout the camp, slay brother, neighbor, and kin." Slay brother, neighbor, and kin, right? Jews fighting Jews. The Levites did as Moses had bidden, and some 3,000 people fell that day. Like, that's what it says. Yeah! Yeah! Right? Like, when you learn it in Hebrew school, you hear like, oh, like Moses is angry and he smashes the tablets, or like sometimes you even hear that he grinds up the golden calf and makes them drink the gold ashes, which is horrific enough. But like, no, the book is very explicit. Like, they kill one another. Like, there's a mini genocide, like brother killing brother. Like, the Cain and Abel story is this metaphor that runs through the entire thing, right? Like, the history of Israel, the history of the Israel people, is this history of like internecine conflict, that peoples who can claim the same lineage and the same history and the same origin fight and kill one another. And there are so many instances of that. Like, the book of Ezra is just one, that Ezra disqualifies these other kinds of Jews because they didn't experience the trauma of the Babylonian exile the way that his people did. Yeah, and like the translations of the book of Ezra are very explicit. Like, he talks about blood purity, and that like there were some Babylonian Jews who returned and then married the people who had then settled in Jerusalem, that the Babylonians had moved into Jerusalem. He's like, this is not okay. You can't have the mixing of the people. We need to be pure, even though they're like literally the same people worshiping the same God. Like, this is it's quite transparent in the holy text that we have. Like, this isn't like a hidden feature. Like, it sort of surprises me that it wasn't taught to me this way, but when I read the primary sources, like, that's what I got. Like, it's all about this like brother fighting, and it gives me context for what's happening geopolitically today that I don't know, I find helpful. Lets me understand the world a bit better. I mean, Dudette, I think most people do see the books as allegory and metaphor. And it's a very small but vocal group of people who insist that the Bible is literal history. But it is a funny kind of, like, it's not history, right? Like, these are stories that were written down by ancient peoples to try to explain themselves to themselves. Like, there is some kind of truth in them. It's just not history the way we think of history today, right? It's highly biased. They don't care so much about facts, but they are trying to tell their own history, right? Their own cultural identity story. Yeah, I wonder which parts are accurate all the time. Yeah, like, I think all of the I think there's truth in all of it, right? Like, there's an echo of some historical event that happened in there. And you can uncover it. Like, I've spent a lot of time like trying to understand the timeline in which the Torah was written, right? Like, Deuteronomy was written last and was written like in the midst of the Babylonian exile. And so, like, you have to like take, even though the book of Deuteronomy is telling stories about Exodus, right? It's like, it's framed as like Moses is in the desert giving these sermons to his people, but the return of the Israelites into Israel, like the book of Joshua, like all that stuff actually needs to be read. Like, what it's actually about is the return of the Babylonian exiles to Jerusalem, like 500, 600, 700 years after it's said to have taken place. So it's like, it's not that it's not history, but often like it's telling an older story to say something about contemporary events. So it's a weird kind of history. But there's absolutely truth in it. Whatever truth means. I don't know. Why is that, Julie? He was pretty crazy. Yeah. I mean, not all of the stories about David are good stories. He was the king and then in exile, and he wrote so much music. Yeah. I mean, I think I probably have a bad habit of focusing on the really terrible bits, because they're so, like, bare and naked and sort of horrifying, right? So, like, that story of David raping Bathsheba and then having her husband killed so that he could marry her, right? And then the fallout from that, right? Like these, like, the civil war that comes from his family because he can't keep it in his pants, nor can his sons. Right, like all these awful things about sexual assault and incest, and like there's a lot more to David than that, right? Like he had all these beautiful psalms, and right, like he is this sort of like iconic figure of the low who was raised high and then brought low again, right? This like constant up and down cycle. Yeah, like the Torah does not have any unequivocally good characters, right? Like even Moses is a murderer. But I mean, I don't know how to read it. I guess I try to read it in my own way, but like I don't. There's quite a lot about David that I know nothing about. I should probably go. I've sat here chatting with you for a lot longer than I expected, but it's really nice to hang out with you all. I know I say that every time, but it's like really true. It makes me really happy to chat with you. So I will be here tomorrow, and I hope to see you there and then. Okay. Farewell.